We're looking at something really core to, well, how we feel and function, the link between holding back emotions and stress.
Yeah, it's a fascinating connection. We've pulled together some key research,
Hmm.
especially insights coming out of Harvard Medical School and related work.
Right. The idea is to really unpack how suppressing feelings actually impacts our bodies, our stress levels. What does this mean for you listening?
We've got a mix of sources. There's a big longitudinal study from the Harvard School of Public Health, some interesting observations from a Harvard workshop,
Uh-huh.
work by James Gross, who is at Harvard, and then some broader findings too.
So a pretty comprehensive look. The goal is understanding, the key insights here.
Exactly. What does the science actually tell us about emotion suppression and stress?
Okay, let's jump into that 2013 Harvard School of Public Health study first. They followed what, over 700 adults?
Yeah, 729 adults for 12 years. They measured how much people tended to suppress their emotions.
And the findings were, well, pretty striking, weren't they?
Definitely. Higher suppression was linked to a 35% increased risk of dying from any cause.
35%. Wow.
And even more dramatically,
Yeah.
a 70% higher risk of death, specifically from cancer.
70%. That's huge. It really brings home that this isn't just about feeling a bit uncomfortable. It could have serious long-term health consequences.
Absolutely. And while the study endpoint was mortality, the implication for chronic stress is clear.
How so?
Well, constantly tamping down emotions keeps your body in a state of, let's say, heightened alert, sustained physiological arousal.
Like leaving the engine running high all the time.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It creates wear and tear.
Yeah.
That sustained arousal is a form of chronic stress.
Okay, that makes sense. Then there was this workshop at Harvard Longwood campus with Thomas Hubble.
Right. Hubble observed that people often use suppression to cope with high levels of stress, sometimes stress they aren't even, fully conscious of.
So it's like a defense mechanism against feeling overwhelmed.
Precisely. But he noted it can lead to this feeling of being fragmented inside, disconnected from your own emotions and their physical signals.
Creating a kind of cycle then. Stress leads to suppression. Suppression leads to more internal disconnection.
Yeah, it feeds itself. You suppress to cope, but the suppression itself hinders genuine processing and relief.
Now, building on the physical reaction idea, James Gross's research is really key here. He was at Harvard, now Stanford.
Yes. Gross's work showed something crucial. Trying to suppress an emotion doesn't make it vanish.
Right, it doesn't just go away.
Instead, the physiological response can actually intensify. Things like heart rate, sweating, they can increase.
So your body is working harder even if you're trying to appear calm.
Exactly. It takes effort to suppress, and that effort registers physiologically. And interestingly, he found this can even affect people you're interacting with.
Really? How?
Their own physiological measures, like heart rate, can increase when they're talking to someone who is actively suppressing emotions. It suggests stress can be, in a way, contagious.
Wow, that's fascinating. It adds an interpersonal layer to it.
And another Harvard study specifically looked at something called autonomic reactivity.
Autonomic reactivity. Okay, break that down for us. What does that mean in simple terms?
Think of it as your body's automatic stress system, heart rate, blood pressure, sweating. Autonomic reactivity is how quickly and intensely that system fires up in response to a stressor.
Got it. So what did they find about suppressors?
They found that individuals who habitually suppress emotions tend to show higher autonomic reactivity. Their stress response system seems more easily triggered and reacts more strongly.
So they're kind of primed for a bigger stress reaction.
It appears so. And this isn't just isolated findings. Broader research consistently links suppression with things like increased heart rate, higher blood pressure.
And elevated cortisol, right? The main stress hormone.
Exactly. There was even a big meta-analysis of studies confirming that when people are told to suppress emotions in experiments, it reliably leads to greater physiological stress responses across different bodily systems.
So physiologically, what's happening? Why does holding back trigger this?
Essentially, the act of internal inhibition, of holding back, is interpreted by the body as a stressor. This kicks the sympathetic nervous system and the HPA axis into gear.
That's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the central stress command.
Correct. That leads to the release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. They prepare the body for fight or flight, increased heart rate, blood pressure, energy mobilization.
Which is fine short term, but if suppression is your go-to strategy,
then that system is chronically activated, and that's where the long-term damage can occur.
Okay, so we see the physical toll. What about the mental and emotional side?
Well, unsurprisingly, suppression is linked to increased anxiety and depression. It also correlates with having fewer positive emotions generally.
Makes sense. If you're shutting down the negative, you might be shutting down the positive too.
Potentially, yes. And those unexpressed negative emotions don't just disappear. They can fester, intensify, maybe lead to unhealthy coping mechanisms down the line.
And relationships. You mentioned the interpersonal stress earlier.
Right. Suppression can impact social connections. It can make it harder to feel authentic or truly connect with others if you're constantly hiding parts of your experience.
It contrasts sharply with healthier ways of managing feelings, like actually acknowledging them, maybe talking about them appropriately.
Exactly. Healthy regulation involves processing, not just pushing away.
So let's wrap this up for everyone listening. While these Harvard sources didn't put like an exact number on how much stress increases,
No, not a specific percentage increase in stress itself.
the overall picture is incredibly clear. Suppressing emotions is strongly linked to increased physiological stress responses.
And potentially serious negative long-term health outcomes, as that 2013 study showed. The consistency across different types of research is what's really compelling.
It really highlights how interconnected our minds and bodies are. Holding back feelings isn't just a mental act, it has real physical consequences.
Yeah, it truly does.
So maybe the final thought for you is to consider, the subtle ways you might be tamping down feelings during your day.
Yeah, it raises a really important question to reflect on. Where might you be suppressing, perhaps without even fully realizing it? And what could even a small shift towards acknowledging those feelings mean for your overall stress and ultimately your health?